Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Finance and Admin Building Committee. Today, we are joined by Councilman Clunt and Councilman Clay, along with appointed officials, City Attorney Paul Jensen and Finance Officer Chandra Phillips. We have a short itinerary for you today, and we'll turn this over to the Finance Officer.
The first one is just informational. Our malt beverage renewals are due back on May 6th. Well, actually, they're due back on that Friday, the 4th. And then we'll have the renewal meeting on the 6th. I think there's 14 of them, and they're just the on-off malt beverage licenses. So that's where we're at with that. I've already received a few of them back, so just have a few more to get taken care of. Otherwise, the 2025 budget. First 4 pages that you have are the revenues. I'm sorry, Mr. Clay, they are small.
Yes, they are.
I'm not sure, it's just about impossible to make them any bigger, so that you guys can see them a little bit bigger, but I can do my best. This is just how I had sent them out beforehand so that everyone could get a little bit condensed version, but I can do what I can to get that in. Not a lot changed in revenues. It does say, well, we don't have an exact up or down because of transfers and not knowing where transfers need to be until we go through the expense side of things and see what everyone needs. So we do not ask for the maximum amount that we can ask for in property taxes. We have never received everything we have asked for in property taxes. A lot of that, is my understanding, is people don't pay their property taxes on time. So you can see 2022 we received 611, 2023 we received 616. We're looking to be right around there again this year.
What line is this?
The very top, property tax current.
Okay.
101, 3100,
Got it.
31110.
I'm there.
Yep. We put 615. We could ask closer to 650, 660. But if we put that in there, assuming we're gonna get it, we're not gonna get it. And I'd rather put in a real number so that we know what numbers we have to work with for expenses. I used to put in the number that we could ask for. We just don't receive it. I think 2022 was the last time I put in the real number we could ask for, which was $632,300. We received 611. Not that that's a lot of difference, but sometimes $20,000, $30,000 can make a big difference when that's how you're trying to budget or balance your budget. So, sales tax, we left it at 2 million. I skipped down about 5 lines, Jeremy. It's not growing like it was. So we've seen that it's kind of balancing out. We've seen that our 3B is not doing great. Conversations around town is 3B will continue to not do great because people aren't going out and drinking and eating as much as they were. I think the hotels are probably still okay, but that's where we're at with that right now. So otherwise, the rest of them are pretty self-explanatory and didn't really change much. One thing you will see that was kind of a pain in the butt when we were going through this is last year we went live with the new AR system. And when we went live with it, they told me we had to have a separate revenue line for AR revenues versus regular revenues. That was false. We just needed a separate receivables line, which is just a liability account. Anyways, so on some of these, you'll see that we put a higher amount in there than what that line shows, but that's because we added the 2 lines together. There's an AR streets and then a regular streets. I guess that's probably, so if you go down to 101, 3400, 34300, street charges for services. This is 100% when the street department does work on another department's vehicle. They charge them for the parts because streets is paying for the parts, and they charge them $20 per hour for the labor of the shop mechanic. That is what that line is for, and only that line is for, to keep track of those. So, last year was the first full year that we had that, and they're still working out the kinks with that, is my understanding.
Why did the grave digging charges drastically drop from 22 total activity 22 to 23 total activity? Went from 23, almost 24,000 to under 10. I can't imagine the burials have been reduced.
So, that's one of those you have to add the two together. So 9,500 plus 6,400. It still dropped. You're looking at
Okay.
15, 16,000. That's one of those that you can't predict how many graves you're gonna have to dig in a year, not unfortunately, I guess that's a good
Right.
thing, I'm not sure.
It just was a discrepancy.
Yep, so that's one of those lines you have to add the two together.
We really took the approach, again, Chandra said this, but it's better to operate off actual numbers that we're seeing and be low, and if they're higher, you've just got a higher revenue number.
Yeah.
The one that we didn't include in this list that is in last year and previous years, last year our total budget was what, 4.476 million. 1.4 million of that was a transfer in. That's not included, that last line, 39,110. You guys will determine with your finance officer what needs to be transferred in as you conclude all budgets in August. That number will come up. I'm guessing if you transferred the same thing in, you're gonna be at what, 4.5 million, which is about a 3%, 1%, 1 to 3% increase in your overall number. That's with declining numbers in other areas.
I did put in down at the bottom, the increase, decrease in the budgets over the years too. So the 2023 total budget, it was a decrease of 2% from the 2022 budget. 2024 budget was a decrease of 1% from the 2022 budget. So,
Of the general fund revenue.
of the general fund, yep, revenues, yep. Which ultimately, because they balance, you could say your expenses are trending the same way too.
Yeah, it's gonna be about 1%.
General fund.
Yep. That's why your enterprises are so important.
You'll see the same thing with the communications fund, the 214 fund. We don't have the transfer in there because ultimately the transfer is based off of the amount of expenses that they have. So it's just to make it balanced, so we don't put that in there. You can, obviously a very good trend, they're going up. 2022, they did a 400,000 transfer, 2023, 498, 2024, they're scheduled to do 558. We tried to base it off of what the CPI would be for the rates and looking at that. However, there is just not a good, you could have one county.
CPI plus telephone lines. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
the
trying to
telephone
project-
lines was crazy.
Yeah.
One year, Tripp County was way up, and then the next year, way down. Same with Bennett County, Millette County, all of those counties. There was just no good way of getting a good average and going through it with the per line, so that's a tough one.
Yep.
The pool bond, that's just the 60,000 that we asked for from the county to help us pay for the remaining on the pool.
What's the year again?
2027 is the scheduled year that is to be paid off. I do believe wholeheartedly we can have it paid off in 2026. So this bond 100% goes away with the payoff of the pool. We cannot ask for it back. It's done. It was specific to the pool. I did skip third penny, so I'm sorry. It's at the bottom of the first page, the third penny, the 138. So we've had this conversation before. I've heard other stories now. 3B is a sales tax that the city chose to go with, and Mr. Clay, if I understand correctly, you were around when this came about.
Yes.
It was, yes, the city went after it for the pool, but it's my understanding that when you guys did that, you informed the public, it's not going away.
Very clearly.
Okay. I've heard different from the public
Yeah.
recently.
Well, so informational, factual history. So we came into maybe this room, I don't know, and had a telethon. Basically called all the constituents, all the people in town. And I conveyed a very clear message in the telethon and around town in conversations that yes, this is to be used for the pool payment. But like all taxes, when it gets added, it will not go away. It will be used, at that time, it'll be used and allocated towards something else, so. And that would be my intention as a councilman, and that was my intention as a councilman in 2006, whenever that was, so.
And it's not for this year's budget, but it is something that we are looking into. There are a lot of things that you can use that 3B money for. There are a lot of things you can't use it for.
Yep.
It's very specific that it can be used for the growth and development of your city. Community centers, parks, pools, things of that nature. You can also use it for your donations that you give to other entities as well, because that is developing your community. So there are a lot of things within the general fund that we could use that for in the future, but again, that'll be a full council decision at that time. But we are looking at, in 1 year from now, council will have to make that decision. So it is something that I would like you guys to have in the back of your heads, because a year from now, we will need to know how to budget for that in 2026.
How much, and how much is it?
Around 138,000 a year. So it wouldn't cover, the only things it could cover is your donations, and it would come very close to just covering your donations if you left them the same as what you're doing now.
Yeah, they're like 150 something.
Which I will be sending out letters this week to your nonprofits, and letting them know to submit for the 2025 budget so that we can get those in and you guys can start looking those over too, or whoever's on the finance committee. I usually don't have them come in until after that May 6th meeting, so that, or the first meeting in May, so that we know who's gonna be on that finance committee at that time. So, the water fund, it is up 3.18%. We were conservative with this. In the knowledge and understanding, we have not had a full year of accurate records since 2017 on our water department. That was the last year that all meters were working. We clearly understand it'll most likely be higher because we're actually getting our meters in. We've only got a few left to install as we're waiting on some parts on some commercial stuff or some residential accounts that need to let us in. We sent out letters 2 weeks ago to those residential accounts that clearly defined what our ordinance is. If you don't let us in or make plans to let us in the next 30 days, you will either have to pay a $50 fine each month, or you're actually subject to being shut off from your water as well. And it's my understanding that is the intention of the Public Works Director, is to just go ahead and shut them off.
Yep.
So that we can get in and get it done, so that we can get accurate readings on our accounts. So those letters were sent out. If you have more, that's fabulous. I'd love to make more than what we budgeted. It just becomes unappropriated cash for the next year at that point in time. But I also hate to give you an unrealistic number, a guess. I'd rather give you numbers that's based off of historical facts than just guess. We did throw in what CPI would be, because we do know that CPI on the minimum plus half CPI on the usage. So we did throw that in there, so that's why it's right at that 3.18% higher than what it was the year before. Same with electric fund. Electric, we never really, well, we never didn't get readings. Troy mentioned last night that we're doing an audit on all of our commercial accounts, governmental accounts, which is great that we're doing that. we found some errors. We are working with those customers to get those errors corrected, to work with them, and so that'll be good information for us to have. We also found in this audit that our governmental accounts, the demand rate didn't update when we went live with the new system in 2023. It stayed at the 2022 rate, so instead of being at 1330, it was at 1310. We don't have a ton of governmental accounts, so it wasn't a huge loss, but it is something that we found. We went back, we've checked all of our rates for 2024, everything is correct. So I think in the future, for my office, that's something that I think we need to do every year in January, is pick out a bunch of commercial accounts and just do an audit from there and make sure that everything is what it's supposed to be. So that is a future plan.
If you guys take a look at the revenue on the electrical side, we obviously had a presentation from our engineers on the upgrades that are needed. The plan that's in place will support, with the allocation and disbursement of a grant, a GRIP grant, this project that you guys will have to deal with in the future. And it will support the 15 years the way it's structured right now, I believe. It's gonna be close. I mean, obviously, there'll be certain things that may surprise your finance officer and you, but it will support this infrastructure upgrade to the city of Winter.
Something for you to think about. You already have over $1 million in a money market account, which is a higher interest earning account than what our checking account is. Do you want to take some of that other $1 million that's sitting in there in unappropriated cash for this project and clearly set it aside for the project in a higher interest earning account?
What is there, 1.4?
I'd have to look, it's a variable,
It's 1 point, well, no,
the money market.
in unappropriated right now.
Oh,
you have
sorry.
Sitting 1.4.
Yeah.
I wouldn't move it all.
I agree. Don't move it all. You have to have some money to, but you could move a certain portion of it into a higher interest account and clearly set aside by resolution. This money is set aside in an outlay for the next 60 months for a project coming up at the end, and at any point in time. So understand that, yes, we're setting it aside for this outlay, but if something crazy happens to the city of Winter, we have to stop that project, something else comes up, we have to do that. You can always pass another resolution to cancel that one and utilize that money. So you're putting it aside so it's not somebody saying, oh, we have this cash, I can use it. You're putting it aside for that, but you still have access to it, if that makes sense.
Capitalize on that rate right now.
Right. Yeah, our interest rates have been insane at this point in time. So it's been nice to see where we were making maybe 2,000 in a year, we're now making about 2,000 in a month.
It's more like it.
Yeah, it's been nice to see those checks come in.
Better to make it than pay it.
Yeah. Sewer fund, and I know that Troy has actually already started talking with the Water Sewer Committee about his expense budget, and looking at different things there. I will remind you that last year during budget season, when sewer was here, you guys withdrew his $100,000 for sewer relining and said, let's not do it this year so we can do more next year. But then an hour later decided you were gonna utilize that money to supplement the general fund. So just be aware of that. As soon as the highway project is closed out, all of the outlay money will be moved into unappropriated cash. Until then, I can't move it. We have to get the highway project completely closed. I do know that DGR is working very closely with the state, Troy, and,
Where's the
the
rest
engineer?
of that? Where's that money you're talking about? How much is that?
It's gonna be about 398 and 318.
Yeah, somewhere
Is
around
that on
there.
here somewhere?
No, it's
No.
not on here.
Okay.
Nope.
But like you heard Doug say last night, once they hit their punch list, they'll probably finish that punch list the first week in May and close that out. And then after that point, Chandra will bring that to new business to you guys. You guys will see it in committee first to move that back into, from outlays to unappropriated cash. And it's gonna be
It'll be an in and out for the Vector truck.
possibly, yeah. 398 and 318.
And
Two separate funds,
There's water
water
and
and sewer. So 398 in water,
So
318
there's like 700,000 that we didn't spend that we'd laid. put
for this
out.
project.
And that was because we did a lot of our own stuff ourselves.
Clap your hand.
And you got a CDBG grant for $600,000. And the ARPA money that came in because of COVID.
Well over half of it's getting spent on the Vector. Well
Yeah.
over half of it's getting spent on the,
Once you buy the Vector truck, you will take your unappropriated cash in the sewer department down to just over $200,000. So you will not have much for cash
That's
left in
not
sewer.
including
No.
this money, the.
It does include that money.
That does include that 400.
Because the back, what is it,
Where's your
425,
financial
435? In my office,
Darn,
sorry.
I gotta pull it up.
So, once you move this money into sewer with the current sewer unappropriated cash, then you buy the Vector for right around 435, 438, somewhere in there, it leaves approximately,
About what's in there right now, like Austin said, an in and out.
yep,
So the sewer outlay surplus pays for the Vector. Okay.
getting that COVID money was huge. That was over $500,000. It's not been fun to report it to the state because you have to have so many things, or to this government, but it was worth it. And then the CDBG ultimately paid for the project. Even the additions that were there that we weren't expecting because of COVID changes, so. Airport fund, you can see that having a fixed base air flight medical team has allowed our revenues to go up in the aircraft hangar rentals. So that's good to see, good to have. It's not a huge increase, it's still $42,000 budget in a year. It's not a big budget.
There was
by
a
any
grant
means.
there in 23, that's what bumps that.
Yes, there was a grant in 23 as we finished up a project. You will have a project in 2024. I don't foresee it going over into 2025, but you never know. We haven't gone out for bid yet. We plan to go out for bid in the next month or so. Just waiting for the FAA to give us the go-ahead on the plans and them to officially release our bill money that we have out there, so. Sanitation fund. The only thing that changed in revenues, and this is based off of a council decision, so this can change, please understand that, we just did this based off of conversations. The rent for the building that we're currently receiving from our current contractor, we only did 6 months worth in 2025. It's not a huge amount, but it is something to consider if you choose to go the other direction that you've been talking about with getting your own trucks. You wouldn't have that revenue anymore.
Right.
We're not talking about changing any rates, whether we stay with the current the current contractor or we move with ours. However, in May of 2025, it could go up. If we stick with the contractor, it could go up in May, June of 2025. So those are all things to consider on an unknown situation. Recycle revenue, we, what happened to it, Jody?
It's not much.
Number.
It's 12,000. I think it was like
It was
1,000 a
10 is
month.
what we were putting in there, but why?
Says 80.
Says 80.
I
No.
know.
Hmm.
It should not. That was a fat finger on my part. It's almost too small for me to read, Mr. Clay.
Yeah, we definitely did not do $80,000.
No.
I promise you that.
Yeah, it should be at 10, so that'll take it down to 704,000. Let me relook at that. see if there was supposed to be on my other notes, if that was supposed to be a different line for something else. Municipal jail. The only thing that really changed other than we left our prisoner care at the current rates that we have in contract. This obviously can change based off of the contract that is currently pending with the marshals. But until, I am the type of person, until it's on paper, I'm not gonna put it into your budget, because if you budget for it and then we don't get it, that can create a whole lot of issues.
And if you budget those revenues, put it into their budget, then they'll spend it.
Right.
Yes.
I'd rather,
Yep, so it can always be readdressed, that is not a problem. The other thing you will see, and this will be a council decision, is we did not put any interest earning revenues in there, based off of the fact that the goal of current mayor is to pay off that bond at the end of this year. This is the 2024, December 2024, or January 2025, you could make your first additional payment. The bond said no additional payments for 5 years. We will be at 5 years. We took it out in 2019. We are at 5 years in December. If the Marshall contract comes in, if you find the $700,000 from Public Works and you use all cash from corrections, it is possible. As long as nothing else comes up and nobody needs any cash and all of that jazz. So at this point in time, we did not put any interest revenue in there because you wouldn't have any money in that account to earn interest. But there's a lot of what ifs before we get to that point too. And hopefully one of them will be answered in the next few weeks.
I think you'll have your answer. I think you're gonna see your answer on that contract that final week in April or first week in May.
I'm hopeful. Questions on revenues?
I'm just curious about one thing, if it was just me missing something or what. When I look at the very end of that line we're just talking about, where it gives your breakdown for the Marshall 85 and the county 77, we've got two levels of county.
We do, so that's the average between them. It's actually a
Oh, that's
little
the
bit
average.
of, yes.
Okay.
So our outside of 6th Judicial Circuit right now, they're at $81. They'll be at $84, I believe, next year. And then the majority of our customers are within the 6th Judicial Circuit, so they're right at that 75, 76.
Okay.
So we did make it a little bit higher than our, because also Tripp County
Yep.
did not go up this year because they hit the bench threshold.
Correct.
And looking to hit that threshold again and will most likely not go up, so they're staying at a lower rate.
What was inside the 6th Judicial, 70, 77?
I think there's
75,
75, 76, somewhere in there.
76.
Yeah, for next year, yep.
Yeah.
What were they this year? 70,
That minus 3.4%.
come on.
I think 72, 71, 72.
Yeah, you're looking at 8375 on outside the 6th Judicial and right there.
So I did come up with, and I didn't print it out for you guys.
It'll
You
end
guys
up being
are-
a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I see, I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing one, that's
Yeah.
all. Your budget, your averaging makes good sense. I understand it now.
You guys know we've gone crazy with CPI in the city of Winter. As you heard me say last night, even the feds are saying throw CPI into all of your contracts.
We're leading the charge.
Right.
Tell them about the conference.
Oh my goodness. So
Everything that we've been doing, they're
They're-
telling people to do.
Yes.
Yes. Well, and it wasn't even an FAA guy. It was actually an attorney who thinks very highly of himself. Who owns 3 planes because he's done so well and he's like my age, and anyways, it is what it is. But he was talking about land leases and contracts, and he said FAA will frown against anything over 30 years. They don't like it. They really don't like 50 years. They're willing to look at it if it's a new build, because, you know, then you can help them make sure that they can pay it off and have all of that worked out with their banks and everything. You should have a get-out clause that if that person wants to leave, the city has first refusals, and you should have CPI built in. Now, when you're talking 12 cents a square foot, and you throw CPI on there, you're talking pennies. But it is at least something so that you don't have to come back and do a huge leap like we did. We went from 8 cents to 11 cents in 1 year, so.
So this is the point in the budget process, the revenues are done. I'm going to, with 3 weeks to go, instruct the HR department to start calculating all wages. So you can see the starting wage increase for next year. You need to get these numbers into the budgets for OASI, personal services, health benefits, so that your department heads, as you guys go into committees, that money is out of the revenues already. And then they can start calculating on what they have left to use operationally.
So what was on my mind when we're looking through this, the projected revenues are up 3%?
Across the city as a whole, yeah, they're pretty darn
I thought I
close to
saw a
CPI.
3% number there.
Yeah.
What's the projected CPI?
3.4.
So you're gonna lose a little until those contracts are signed that may come in, but not a lot. These revenues held true to what we're seeing on a national level. But the most important thing you can do right now is in the next 2 weeks before you hit your committees and start looking at expenses, you and the HR department need to get wages. You need to calculate your health benefits, insurance costs, your OASI, to drop those, plus your payments
Yep.
for equipment to get those out of, into
So
the
you
expense.
want us to plug in
numbers.
numbers at just the CPI?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless this council is going to tell you, I mean, this committee can tell you preliminarily what they want to do.
Okay.
I think where we're setting our revenues aren't really supporting more. You know, we're showing 3% increase of revenues and our CPI is I want to say 3.14, but just because we know why, that's on my
Yeah.
mind always.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't see where the projected revenues are gonna show it unless we're just gonna, we cut the budget hard last year. Well, looks like,
You have a lot of big projects coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to make a huge difference, because you are going to have to use cash to support those projects.
Yep.
And you can. We are in a good financial position to use cash.
What is our cash on hand, general fund cash on hand or whatever?
You started the year just over $1 million.
1.691.
1.691?
Yeah.
Stay under
But
2 million.
I'm not him.
Rain Man.
I will gladly go look it up for you, but I'm not gonna, I just know it was over $1 million.
yeah, that's a fair answer.
So general fund cash on hand is 1.691 mil.
Right
Okay.
around there.
What other cash do we have in funds?
Your electrical fund, you've
Yep.
got about 1.4 in unappropriated. I don't know the water and sewer. I was asking Chandra if she could get those, and I don't know.
We already know that when that project, there's cash there now, but then we have this money come back, that's gonna be spent. But for sewer, but then the water was 200,000 or something, that,
Once you buy the Vector. it'll
okay,
be
I was looking all the wrong way. The sewer, there's,
What was the cost on the back there, Austin? 5,
Just over
438, I wanna say.
438?
something.
so
maybe
one of those funds.
$50,000, $60,000 on a trade-in.
700 coming
or
back from the project.
Selling it.
We just went through that. 400 of it's gone, so there's 300 one way or the other going.
Yeah, and that's the other thing you guys have to think about. If you want to pay off that bond, you will need Public Works to pay back the 700,000.
Without a doubt.
Sanitation does not have that money, so you will have to take it from another fund, and the only other two that could support it are electric and water.
I'll get you those numbers. I've got it. Or Chandra can. I've got them over in my office.
And this 1.4 unappropriated cash in electric fund, that's not talking about our $1 million casualty reserve that's sitting there and has continued to
You have
sit there.
$1,038,000 in that.
What?
$1,038,000. You generated what,
That's just
38,000, 40,000
interest
in
over how
interest?
many ever years it's been or whatever.
Yeah.
2 years, 40 grand.
We've had that sitting there for quite a while.
Yeah, but you just had it, you didn't transfer it to a money market until,
Year and a half.
Oh,
I
so
wanna
it's
say maybe
just
3 years
setting.
ago. It was just sitting in our
setting
general checking.
General fund, yeah,
yeah.
Non-interest bearing account it was in.
yeah,
We do make interest on our checking account. I do,
Yeah.
I mean, we do.
very little.
Yeah, it's not high, but definitely nothing like a money market. So that was a good move on council to move it over to a money market. I can get you those exact numbers as to where we are at in cash for all departments as of January 1st.
That would be good.
I'm not comfortable yet giving you a projection of cash for 2025, only because we're not even started in our busy time of year yet.
Because last year, we did not deficit spend. We didn't touch our cash when we were doing our budget. We didn't touch it.
In 2020, for the 2024 budget?
Yeah.
You did in sanitation.
Sanitation, we
That's
did.
the only, other than always you do in general fund, because you have transferred in and dispatched it.
But it was coming from the
It came from water, electric, and
enterprises.
sewer.
It came from the enterprises, not from cash on hand.
Correct. Yep, the only place you
We spent
budgeted to
all-
spend cash was sanitation.
We budgeted to spend all the revenues out of the enterprises and not touch the cash on hand.
And with this grant, once we get all the paperwork figured out, you actually won't have to use your cash in sanitation. You're gonna spend $435,000 in order to make $500,000.
Do we have to write the check on the front side? We do.
Yep.
And where does that check come from? Unappropriated cash out of the general fund then?
You will, once we get the grant
Or-
paperwork, you will adjust your budget to show that you'll receive the grant, and that grant is what's going to pay for that.
So the check isn't cashed until we receive the grant?
Oh, no, it's cash beforehand.
Okay. So we gotta spend 435,000 to receive up to 500,000, but we only receive what we spent, right?
460.
So, but you're also able to utilize what you spent last year. They did go back.
Oh, they
and
did. I
accepted.
misunderstood that.
Yes.
I thought we were granted 500,000, but we weren't gonna be able to get all of that, so we get a recoup.
Yep. So
You
the
get-
total project was just over 1.4 million, and that included
33%.
everything that we spent last year, plus what we wanted for this year. And they gave us 35% up to 500,000 of the total project.
Okay. that-
So, for instance, if our truck comes in more than the 160 that we budgeted for, we're not gonna get any more from the grant. That's why they put a cap on it, in case something comes in higher than what your original cost estimate was. So all we have to spend out of 2024 is 438,000 or whatever it is, which would be your 200,000 to the county, your 4 recycle trailers, and then your truck to pull the trailer.
Yeah. Garbage haul and semi-trailer.
And, yeah, so that, when I say you have to spend 435 to get 500, it sounds confusing.
So that was like $190,000 for that truck, if I remember right. That's what was left after, or estimated on our recycled trailers and the money to,
160.
huh?
160.
160,
Yep.
okay, I'm on. So just say, what if that truck comes in at 135? Do
Then-
we still get the full 500?
No, it's based off of what you spend too. So that's where the 35% comes from, how much you spent, but if it comes in more, you get the max of
You
5.
said it was satisfied, or because we were satisfied from last year, we would still get the full $500,000.
You have to produce receipts,
But we-
whatever you spend, and then you'll get 35% back. So we can spend up, we told them 160. If it comes in under, they get the break also on the backside. They're gonna, we have to spend 35% of our total cost of the project.
Maybe I'm not catching this right, because it was a 2-year project, what we spent last year and what we were planning to spend this year.
and what goes last year helps to satisfy the whole thing, okay? So we get $500,000 coming, we only have to spend our estimated 435, 438, because there must be a percentage, something in there to get us to the 500,000. 35% of 1.4 million,
Yes.
I don't know. And so if that truck comes in below, you see what I'm saying? Because if it's less, I would think we're still saying we should get the whole, but it's the percentages of the 1.4. If the truck comes in low, now it's not 1.4, now it's 1.38. So if the truck costs us less than $20,000, $20,000 less than what we projected, doesn't mean we aren't gonna get, we're gonna get
You're gonna get $6,000 less.
that. That's where I'm getting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll
just
get
the 35% of that we
Yeah.
don't get. We get the 65% of it still. We don't get, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be about $6,000.
That's a whole lot of words to try and get to where we are on.
But I'm glad you're trying to conceptualize it and understand it. That's important. $6,000 less than the $500,000 you'd get back
Yeah.
if he spends less. We're not gonna realize that as 6,000 to our bottom line. That's what they're not gonna allow us to do.
And if it comes in higher than our projected numbers,
We're capped at 160. They protected themselves. But
For
I'm
that.
very grateful for them absolutely doing this.
If it comes in at higher than 160, we won't receive any more from them. But you as council, then if you want to use cash or support that, because that's the truck we need.
so let me ask you
Yeah.
this. The three of you, the four of you, whatever. We have this grant, obviously, for the sanitation and everything we just talked about. We buy this truck to pull this trailer to haul our garbage. What if down the road, the whole plan gets changed? Because we have been told in the past, I go back to FAA is different, but I go back to the airport. But those
Federal
grant
money.
funds bought that tractor, it only could be used there, whatever. What if that is no more? What can we do with that truck?
So that's a great question. And that's what I'm hoping is clearly defined in this grant paperwork once we receive it. We had to submit a letter on that mini excavator that the only way that they would support it is if we stated that it would stay out there and it would only be used for that, because they do not want to use solid waste management funds.
Same deal.
Going back and forth. So if it ends, that's what I'm not sure on. We would have to verify that with the grant
The one thing that
paperwork.
we do know, Councilman, is if you choose to go a different direction or directed to go a different direction, and it violates the terms of the grant, you would make Winter potentially ineligible for all future grants.
That's one possibility.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
federal
Understand
contracts,
that.
and federal contracts.
which hurts your jail too.
Yep.
So, and again, after having this conversation, because we need to have this conversation here, I feel, about the what if. And I'm not saying that I don't think that project needs to go away. I was just saying the what if.
I totally
Yeah.
understand it. It's a good question, but we have to understand there are consequences.
We had this conversation yesterday, actually. I have not always been in favor of what you guys are looking at this point in time, because I didn't have enough information financially.
We all
In the
were.
last year,
Yeah.
financially, there is only one option that makes sense financially.
And we've came along slower on this process than maybe some people wanted to move.
But I think we came along at the pace that the others wanted to.
Yeah.
And it allowed the knowledge to come forward. Yes, some of us may have had a different vision way out of the chute, but with time comes knowledge and understanding.
I
And I'm
feel
okay.
way more comfortable with the pace that we've taken, so we understand numbers and we know accounts and we know that the reducing the weight on the streets and the arm works and it's quick and all that stuff, it works. Mr. Mayor, going back to 2018, and I know you came in, Austin, pretty much right on my heels here. Woo, we came a long ways with this garbage service. Remember back, and I don't need to recap everything, we're still on the live, but one of the first things we addressed was moving the garbage out of the alley to curbside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was us, and that was back, and we've come a long ways on this, and I think it steps in the right direction. And I'm not trying to chew this old dirt, rehash everything, but it's a long process, but I think it's good.
It is. Government moves slow. We're still addressing stuff that I had hoped would be done in 2 years. Well, guess what?
I remember in 2018 when you said all these things. And here we are 6 years later.
Well, I think we can wrap up this meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good start.
If you, I have one thing I'd like to,
Off.
please.